Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into a really visionary concept by Amir Mohamad called the Behistun Protocol. We're going to explore how ancient Persian history translates, literally right in front of us, into modern systems design. If you've ever wondered how a 2,500-year-old monument could actually help fix modern organizational bottlenecks, well, you're absolutely going to love this. Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, I want you to think about this quote. History is not a memory. It is the infrastructure of the future. That's powerful, right? Today, we are not just looking at nostalgic, static artifacts. No, we're looking at highly functional blueprints for tomorrow. We are taking the historical knowledge of the past and completely reconstructing it as a system of social function that we can actually use today.
To really understand how this works, we need to travel back to 522 BCE. The Persian Empire is facing an absolute existential crisis. Gaumata, that's the imposter you see here under the boot of Darius the Great, well, he seized the throne through outright identity fraud. He basically claimed to be Bardia, the brother of the previous king. And listen, this wasn't just some run-of-the-mill rebellion. This was a literal, top-down, systemic lie that threw the entire Achaemenid Empire into total chaos.
The ancients actually had a word for this. They called it Druj, the lie. And it's so crucial to understand that they didn't view Druj as just a personal moral failure or, a simple falsehood. It was defined as a massive, systemic rupture in political legitimacy and social order. Darius the Great had to respond to this crisis, and he didn't just do it with military force. He established a profound protocol of truth, immortalized right there in stone.
So how do we make sense of this today? We're going to use A.M.Ardalan's 5 windows methodology to extract the modern functional logic from this ancient myth. We'll go through origin, historical function, distortion, modern equivalent, and finally, the operational principle.
All right, let's jump right into Window 1, Origin.
When you look directly at these old Persian cuneiform columns from the Behistun rock face, the origin of the crisis is defined with incredible precision. Darius explicitly describes the chaos following the death of Cambyses as a rupture caused by Druj. So the origin of the problem isn't identified as just a simple administrative error. It's pinpointed as a deep, systemic lie that compromised the very legitimacy of the state itself.
Which brings us to Window 2, Historical Function. Carved super high up along a major ancient highway linking Babylon and Media, the Behistun inscription absolutely was not some vanity project for the king. It was a strategic communication tool. Its actual historical function was to restore social capital, rebuild public trust, and basically reinforce the civic infrastructure of the whole empire after a period of really intense civil war. But things change over time, bringing us to Window 3, Distortion.
You see, as the Persian Empire eventually fell and that old cuneiform script faded from use, the original institutional logic was totally forgotten. It became distorted. Centuries later, people actually thought the carvings showed Christ and the apostles, or maybe an ancient schoolmaster. It went from being a functional governance document to just a static relic. I mean, it even suffered damage from Allied soldiers using it for target practice during World War II. The true operational lesson was literally lost to history.
Now for the really exciting part. Window 4, Modern Equivalent.
Functionally speaking, the Behistun monument acts as an ancient transparency protocol. When we look at it through the lens of modern systems design, it operates so much like a decentralized blockchain ledger used for crisis management. Think about it. It was a permanent, unalterable record of truth, distributed publicly to combat a systemic falsehood. Sound familiar?
Let's break that down a bit more. Gaumata, the false king, is essentially the functional equivalent of modern systemic corruption or weaponized fake news that destroys public trust. And here is the absolute genius part. Darius didn't just carve this into a mountain and call it a day. No, he had exact copies of this text written on parchment and sent out to all the provinces of his empire. He literally executed a distributed verification system to achieve maximum transparency and completely defeat the misinformation. It's brilliant.
And finally, Window 5, Operational Principle.
The crucial point here, and if you take away one thing, make it this, is that victory over the lie is the absolute prerequisite for efficiency. Look at the Farvahar blessing the scene. That represents the restoration of cosmic order. Translated into modern terms, this means your institutional performance has to perfectly align with truth. You literally cannot optimize a system that is fundamentally built on corruption or a lack of transparency. Real legitimacy only comes through functioning, transparent performance.
As we synthesize all these ideas, it becomes clear that these ancient concepts aren't just religious symbols, they are operational parameters. The ancient concept of Asha, or cosmic order, that translates directly into the modern demand for transparency, procedural justice, and structural fairness in our institutions today.
Likewise, Mithra transforms from an ancient deity of covenants into a perfect blueprint for modern trust architecture. It teaches us that contractual integrity has to come before coercive authority. A successful institution ensures that cooperation relies on rational incentives and structurally guaranteed trust, not just top-down force.
And then we have Verith Ragna, the embodiment of victorious overcoming of obstacles. Today, that translates to adaptive systemic efficiency. It gives modern leaders the exact framework they need to decisively disrupt corrupt structures, bust through bureaucratic inertia, and manage institutional crises with both strategic patience and incredibly rapid responsiveness.
So by filtering history through these 5 windows, we aren't just, studying the past. We are translating ancient civilizational memory into highly functional, cutting-edge modern solutions. Those stone reliefs and ancient codes, they actually become our blueprints for combating modern systemic lies and building incredibly resilient organizations.
I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder for your own organizations. If we treat ancient myths as actual institutional blueprints, what modern bottlenecks can we solve today? Because the Persian Renaissance is not a return to the past. It is designed for the future. This whole concept was written and directed by Amir Mohamad. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.